Hello, welcome here. Have you ever found yourself in a strange, almost surreal situation where you have important tasks looming, deadlines breathing down your neck, and an undeniable desire to get things done, yet you remain utterly paralyzed? You are not being lazy. In fact, you might even be feeling a frantic urge to start, a deep anxiety about the consequences of not starting. But for some inexplicable reason, a powerful, invisible force holds you captive, glued to your seat, scrolling endlessly, or simply staring into space. You tell yourself, "I'll start in 5 minutes," or "tomorrow will be different," only to find tomorrow bringing the same familiar paralysis. It is a deeply frustrating and often self-shaming experience that many of us face in this fast-paced, demand. This is about something far more insidious, a hidden psychological struggle that a psychologist has finally unmasked. Today, we're going to dive deep into that inner demon Faye, the real root of your procrastination, Faye, and arm you with the insights and tools to finally break free. If this resonates with you, do consider hitting that like button and subscribe to the channel for more insights into the hidden workings of your mind. Now, let's peel back the layers of this pervasive problem. For too long, we've simplistically labeled procrastination as laziness. The common advice follows: just do it, manage your time better, set stricter deadlines. While these surface-level tips can sometimes offer temporary relief, they rarely address the fundamental psychological mechanisms at play. If you've tried them all and still find yourself stuck, it's because the problem isn't your character. It is a deeply wired coping mechanism. The first and perhaps most crucial insight we must embrace is this: procrastination is not a time management problem. It is an emotional management problem. Think about it. When you avoid a task, what are you truly avoiding more often than not? It is not this could be fear of failure, fear of judgment, anxiety about the unknown, boredom, frustration, self-doubt, or even the feeling of being overwhelmed. Your brain, in its infinite wisdom and sometimes misguided protective instincts, registers these potential negative emotions as a threat. And when faced with a threat, our primitive brain has a few go-to responses: fight, flight, or freeze. Procrastination is often the freeze response. When a task feels too emotionally taxing, too scary, or too challenging, your brain opts for the immediate relief of avoidance. It is a short-term coping mechanism that offers instant gratification, a temporary reprieve from those unpleasant feelings. But this relief is a mirage, quickly replaced by guilt, shame, and increased anxiety, creating a vicious cycle. So how do we tackle this? The application here begins with radical self-compassion and curiosity. Instead of beating yourself up for procrastinating, pause and ask, what emotion am I trying to avoid right now? What am I truly feeling about this task? Is it anxiety about not doing it perfectly? Is it fear of the immense effort required? Is it boredom with the mundane steps? Just identifying the emotion is the first step towards disarming its power. Instead of being an abstract, overwhelming dread, it becomes a specific, manageable feeling you can address. This leads us to our next major insight: the silent tyranny of perfectionism. Many high achievers, paradoxically, are chronic procrastinators, you might think, but I want to do a good job. And that is precisely the problem. The desire for perfection can become a paralyzing force. If you believe that a task must be executed flawlessly, with no room for error, the sheer weight of that expectation can be immobilizing. The task isn't just a task, it becomes a monumental test of your competence, your worth, your very identity. The problem here is that perfection is an illusion. It is an unattainable standard that sets you up for guaranteed disappointment. Or more common, the fear isn't just of doing a bad job. It is the fear that your less than perfect effort will expose your perceived inadequacy to yourself and others. This is a profound concept. Your inner critic whispers, if it is not perfect, don't bother, or what if they see you fail? To protect yourself from this anticipated judgment, you simply don't start. The analysis of this by procrastinating, you keep the possibility of a perfect outcome alive in your mind, while simultaneously shielding your ego from the potential bruise of imperfection. If you never try, you can never truly fail. The application for overcoming perfectionism is multifaceted. First, embrace the mantra, done is better than perfect. Remind yourself that progress, however messy, is always superior to deliberately do a small part of the task imperfectly. Send that slightly unpolished email. Write a rough, unedited first draft. The goal is to break the spell of perfectionism by proving to yourself that the world doesn't end if something isn't flawless. Third, reframe your perspective on mistakes. See them not as failures, but as invaluable feedback, data points for learning and improvement. Every great success, another potent inner demon, is the dual fear of failure and success. We often hear about the fear of failure, but have you considered the fear of success? Both can be equally paralyzing. Let's unpack the fear of failure first. For many, a perceived failure isn't just a setback. It is a confirmation of their deepest insecurities. It triggers thoughts like, I am not smart enough. I am not. To avoid this crushing blow to self-esteem, the brain opts for inaction again. If you don't try, you can't fail, and your fragile self-worth remains protected. The analysis shows that this fear often stems from a fixed mindset, where abilities are seen as static and inherent rather than developed through effort. When you have a fixed mindset, every task becomes a test of your innate talent, and failure means you simply don't have. This might sound counterintuitive, but it is a very real phenomenon. Success can bring with it a whole new set of anxieties, increased expectations, more responsibility, the pressure to maintain a higher standard, the fear of losing what you've gained, or even the discomfort of being in the spotlight. For some, success means leaving their comfort zone, changing relationships, or taking on a public persona. They're not understand that your abilities are not fixed. They can be developed through dedication and hard work. Embrace challenges as opportunities to learn and grow rather than as tests of your inherent worth. Redefine failure as a temporary outcome, a source of information, not an indictment of your character. For the fear of success, try visualizing not just the triumph, but also the demands that come with it. Strategize how to acknowledge that growth, even positive growth, can be uncomfortable, but it is ultimately rewarding. One of the most common forms of procrastination stems from what we call cognitive overload and decision paralysis. You stare at your to-do list, which seems to stretch into an endless abyss. Each item feels immense, daunting. Your brain, faced with too many choices, too many unknowns, and too many, it is like trying to drink from a fire hose. Your system gets overwhelmed, and the only response is to freeze. The problem isn't that you lack the ability to do any one task, but that the sum of all tasks, or even the perceived complexity of a single large task, becomes an insurmountable wall. The analysis here reveals that our brains are incredibly efficient at pattern recognition and decision making when the options are limited, but when faced with ambiguity, vastness, or an overwhelming number of choices, our prefrontal cortex, responsible for planning and executive function, goes into a state of analysis paralysis. We spend more time thinking about how to start than actually starting, often believing that more information or more planning will lead to a perfect execution which, as we've discussed, is its own trap. The take that overwhelming project and distill it into the very next smallest, most manageable step. What is the absolute tiniest action you can take to move forward? Can you just open the document? Can you just write one sentence? Can you just make one phone call? This is where the 2-minute rule comes in handy. If a task takes less than 2 minutes, do it immediately. And for larger tasks, focus only on the first 2 minutes. Tell yourself you only need. Once the inertia is overcome, it becomes easier to continue. Another often overlooked inner demon is the burden of self-imposed rules and shoulds. How often do you find yourself thinking, I should do this, or I have to do that? These should statements, while seemingly motivating, can actually create immense resistance. They strip away your sense of autonomy and make tasks feel like the problem with shoulds is that they often disconnect you from your intrinsic motivation. When you feel forced to do something, even if it is for your own good, your inner rebel tends to resist. This can lead to passive-aggressive inaction, a subtle form of protest against the perceived pressure, even if that pressure comes from yourself or societal expectations. The analysis shows that our brains respond much better to when we feel we have agency. We are far more likely to engage with a task enthusiastically. Shoulds evoke a sense of external control, triggering a psychological reactance, a motivation to regain freedom, by doing the opposite of what is requested or expected. The application for this is to reframe your language, change "I should" to "I choose to," connect the task to your personal values and long-term goals. What will you gain, not what will you lose by not doing it? For example, instead of "I should work out," try "I choose to work out because I value my health and energy." This simple shift in language can transform a burdensome obligation into an empowering choice. Find the internal why that resonates with you, and you'll tap into a powerful, sustainable source of motivation. Speaking of internal voices, this is the voice inside your head that tells you you are not good enough, that the task is too hard, that you'll inevitably fail, or that you are an imposter. This relentless stream of negative self-talk erodes your confidence and convinces you that trying is futile or worse, dangerous. The problem is that this inner critic isn't just passive commentary. It is an active saboteur. It exploits your deepest fears and insecurities, creating a mental environment so hostile that any attempt to take action feels like walking into a psychological battlefield when you are constantly being told you are going to fail or that you are incapable. Why would you even bother to try? The analysis suggests that this inner critic often develops from past experiences, perhaps critical parents, harsh teachers, or societal pressure. Over time, these external voices become internalized, creating a self-perpetuating cycle of self-doubt and inaction. The application to tame your inner critic requires a multi-pronged approach. First, practice self-awareness. Notice when the critic speaks. Don't engage with it immediately. Simply observe its presence. Second, challenge its statements. Is what it is saying objectively true? Is there evidence to support its? Third, cultivate self-compassion. Treat yourself with the same kindness and understanding you would offer a dear friend facing a similar struggle. Acknowledge the difficulty, offer encouragement, and remind yourself of your strengths. Finally, replace the critic's voice with a more supportive, encouraging internal dialogue. Imagine having an inner mentor who believes in your potential and guides you gently forward. This doesn't mean ignore. An often underestimated source of paralysis is the energy drain of indecision. You might spend hours or even days simply thinking about starting a task, weighing pros and cons, researching the best approach, or just agonizing over the first step. This isn't productive work, it is a mental tug of war that depletes your cognitive resources even before you've begun. The problem here is that these open loops continuously consume mental energy in the background, like programs running in the background of your computer. The more open loops you have, the slower and more inefficient your mental processing becomes. This decision fatigue leaves you feeling exhausted and overwhelmed, making the act of actually starting seem even more arduous. The analysis shows that this constant internal debate is a form of passive action. You feel it is a subtle way your brain convinces you that preparation is equivalent to progress, when often it is just another form of sophisticated avoidance. The application to combat this is to establish clear intentions and practice decisive action. Implement the eat the frog principle. Tackle your most challenging or unpleasant task first thing in the morning. By getting it out of the way, you free up mental energy, and for tasks requiring decisions, set a strict time limit for planning or research, and then commit to a starting action. Even if it is imperfect, use if-then planning. If it is 9 a.m., then I will open the report. This pre-commits you to an action, reducing the cognitive load of decision making in the moment. Ritualizing your start can also be incredibly powerful. Create a pre-task routine that signals to your brain that it is time to get to work, perhaps making a cup of tea, putting on specific music, or clearing your desk. This reduces the mental friction of initiating. We then come to the power of micro-actions and momentum. Feeling overwhelmed by the sheer size of a task is a universal experience, and it is a primary driver of procrastination. The psychological concept at play here is related to the Zeigarnik effect, which suggests that people remember uncompleted or interrupted tasks better than completed ones, creating a mental tension that drives us towards completion. The problem is that if the initial step is perceived as too large, we never create that initial open loop that triggers the Zeigarnik effect. We never get to the point where our brain has something to hook onto. The analysis reveals that the initial barrier to starting is often psychological inertia. A body at rest tends to stay at rest, but conversely, a body in motion tends to stay in motion. The key is to reduce the activation energy required to get started. By focusing on minuscule steps, you make the threshold so low that it is almost impossible to say no. The application of this concept is incredibly potent. If you need to write a report, maybe the first step is to just open the word processor. Not even type, just open it. If you need to clean your room, maybe the first step is to pick up one piece of clothing. These aren't just arbitrary actions. They are designed to create that initial spark of momentum. Once you complete that micro-action, you've achieved a small win. This triggers a release of dopamine, a neurotransmitter associated with this chain of small successes builds confidence and makes the larger task seem more approachable. This is how you chip away at a mountain, one pebble at a time. Cultivating a growth mindset towards tasks is another critical tool. Carol Dweck's groundbreaking research on mindsets highlights two fundamental beliefs about our abilities: a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. If you have a fixed mindset, you believe when faced with a challenge, you see it as a test of your inherent ability, and if you struggle, it confirms your limitations, leading to fear and avoidance. The problem here is that a fixed mindset views effort as a sign of weakness or an indication that you are not naturally gifted. This makes challenges terrifying as they expose your perceived deficiencies. When tasks are difficult, it is easy to procrastinate. The analysis shows that a fixed mindset creates a vicious cycle of fear, driven inaction. You avoid tasks to protect your ego, which prevents you from learning and growing, thus reinforcing the belief that your abilities are indeed fixed. The application is to consciously adopt a growth mindset. Understand that your brain is like a muscle. The more you challenge it and put in effort, the stronger and more capable it becomes. Reframe challenge. Focus on the process of improvement and effort rather than solely on the outcome. When you encounter difficulties, instead of thinking, "I can't do this," ask, "What can I learn from this? How can I improve my strategy?" Embrace the struggle as a necessary part of growth. This shift in perspective transforms daunting tasks into exciting adventures of self-discovery and skill. Building the role of environment and accountability, you might have all the right intentions and internal strategies, but if your environment is chaotic or lacks external support, it is like trying to swim against a strong current. The problem isn't just internal, it is also external. A cluttered workspace, constant digital distractions, or a lack of clear external deadlines can make even the most motivated individual falter. Our willpower is a finite resource, and it is easily The analysis shows that human behavior is profoundly influenced by our surroundings and our social connections. We are creatures of habit and context. If your environment is designed for distraction, you will be distracted. If you lack external accountability, it is easier to let internal commitments slide. The application involves strategically optimizing your environment and leveraging social support. Close unnecessary tabs on your computer. Make your environment a cue for focused work. Second, find an accountability partner or group. Share your goals with someone you trust and set up regular check-ins. The mere act of knowing someone expects an update can be a powerful motivator. Third, consider public commitments. Announce your intentions to a wider audience, like on social media, or to your family. The desire to follow through on There are apps and tools designed to block distracting websites or track your progress, turning your digital environment into an ally rather than an enemy. Embracing imperfection and self-compassion is crucial for long-term freedom from procrastination. Even with all these strategies, you will inevitably have days where you slip, where the inner demon creeps back in, and you find yourself procrastinating again. In these moments, the problem with self-criticism is that it doesn't motivate, it demotivates. It makes you feel worse, depletes your energy, and reinforces the very self-doubt that fuels procrastination. You enter a spiral of guilt, shame, and further inaction. The analysis shows that self-criticism activates the threat response in your brain, shutting down your prefrontal cortex vein, the very part of your brain responsible for self-compassion. On the other hand, activates the care system in your brain, which is linked to feelings of safety, soothing, and resilience. It allows you to acknowledge your struggle without judgment, giving you the emotional space to learn, forgive yourself, and try again. The application is to practice radical self-compassion. When you catch yourself procrastinating or feeling bad about it, pause instead of criticizing. Say to yourself, "This is hard right now, and it is okay to struggle. What do I need to move forward with kindness?" Forgive yourself for past slip-ups and understand that you are human. Every moment is a new opportunity to choose a different path. Self-compassion isn't about letting yourself off the hook. It is about giving yourself the emotional resources needed to get back on track more effectively. It is about building resilience and fostering. Ultimately, overcoming procrastination is about cultivating a bias for action. We can analyze, strategize, and understand all the psychological mechanisms in the world. But if we don't translate that knowledge into tangible steps, nothing changes. The problem isn't a lack of information, it is often a lack of initial execution. We can get caught in an endless loop of preparing to prepare, of consuming. The analysis here draws from Stoic philosophy, which emphasizes focusing on what is within our control. Our thoughts, our intentions, and our actions are within our control. The outcome, however, is often not. Procrastination keeps us trapped in the realm of thoughts and intentions, avoiding the messy, unpredictable world of action. But action is the antidote to anxiety. Motion creates emotion. When you start, even if the application is incredibly simple, yet profoundly challenging for many, just start. Don't wait for motivation to strike. Motivation often follows action. Don't wait for the perfect plan. Learn and adjust as you go. Embrace iteration. Your first attempt doesn't have to be your final masterpiece. It is simply a step, a draft, a learning experience. Focus on the value of doing, not just the value of the perfect outcome. Procrastination, therefore, is not a moral failing or an inherent flaw in your character. It is a complex psychological response, a maladaptive coping mechanism often driven by fear, perfectionism, emotional discomfort, and a host of other internal demons. By understanding these roots, by shifting your mindset, by breaking tasks into manageable pieces, by managing your emotions, and by you can transform the paralysis into purposeful action. Remember, it is not about being a robot, it is about understanding your human psychology and working with it, not against it. Your journey to unlocking your full potential begins not with a monumental leap, but with a series of small, intentional, psychologically informed steps. I hope today's sharing provides you with a new perspective on the world and a powerful set of tools. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more insights that empower your life.